when two personalities come together, there's so much at play that we don't see, right? We don't even think about, because when I'm interacting with you, you guys have no idea what my background is, what my past experiences are. I have no idea what yours are, but all of those come together when we interact, and that's what forms the dynamic.
Welcome, everyone, to the Frontline Warriors Club, where we live it, not in it. Join us on this mission as we raise consciousness. You can find us on wearefrontlinewarriors.com. Now, before the show, let's take a moment to inhale, exhale, and let the show begin.
In this episode, we would like to introduce you to Aleksandra Zubek. Alex is a licensed professional counselor based out of Chicago. She has a wide knowledge on human psychology, so we took this time to learn more about relationship dynamics. We explore what a healthy relationship looks like, how to improve your communication, and why some people always seem to find a toxic partner. Thank you, Alex. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your time. Can you give us a little bit of background about yourself?
Yes, I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Illinois, and I work with most all age groups, but primarily focus on young adults and older adults.
Quick question. What is the most exciting part of your job?
I don't know. That's a good question. Probably watching people grow. People who, especially the people who are super opposed to therapy and come in here and dig their heels in, and they're like, I hate this. And then they actually end up getting something out of it and growing. That's my favorite, most exciting part.
So something that therapy and human existence has in common is we're cultivating relationships. You need a relationship amongst yourself and other people, individuals, to have satisfaction in life. So in your field of expertise, how are relationship dynamics? How do you see them, and how can we start to troubleshoot them to bring in positivity and create new light there?
So as therapists and in the field of social sciences, when we say dynamic, what we're really referring to is patterns of behavior. So when it comes to relationship dynamics, we're talking about how people behave between or around each other, how they interact, how they communicate, and how they relate. And all those are important, right? Because those are the backbones of what forms a relationship, whether it's romantic or whether it's a friendship.
And with these dynamics, is there one point that's the weakest? Where do these relationships start to fall apart from, or what's usually the weakest point in a relationship?
Well, I'm going to go on a limb here and say I think you all know it is communication. We love to talk, right? But we never talk about the things that we need to talk about because it's scary and it's so loaded, and it's such an interesting thing because we know what we need to say, but there's just so much holding us back, whether it's anxiety and so on. So communication's a big it's a weakness that people have, or it's the weakest link that maybe we need to work on or iron out or practice.
Is there a root cause of why communication is a weak point? Is it being afraid of being judged by the other partner or somebody that you're in a dynamic relationship with? Is it your own needs that you're not meeting that's causing these errors in communication amongst partners?
So it can be a combination of a lot of things. It could just be one thing, but errors, or let's call them breakdowns in communication, happen because as a society, when somebody tells you what they're feeling or what they're wanting from you, right, that's kind of powerful, and there's a lot of fear related to that. We don't just walk around saying, hey, I'm uncomfortable, or hey, I don't want that, I don't want this. There's also anxiety, how is somebody going to respond when I tell them something, or how are they going to receive this? Am I okay with the potential ways that they're going to respond, or am I so not okay with it, I'd rather not even ask this? It could also be, people are shy, right? People have a hard time talking about feelings. It could be that some of these things that people want to talk about, they don't feel comfortable themselves with it. So it's hard to share something, right? If you're not good with it and sharing it to somebody else, that's just like a whole other step of fear, and you don't want to go there.
Hmm. So what if I'm in a relationship and let's just say I really love my partner, but then this partner is not giving me what I need to feel loved? How would how would I tell that person how to change what they're doing to make me feel more appreciated, more loved?
Well, first we have to think about, we're not going to change them, right? We're not going to get them to change. What we're going to do is we're going to communicate what it is that we want. We're going to engage in some dialogue, and hopefully there is compromise and there's change moving forward. But there's no changing anyone. We can speak our minds. We can say what we need to say and have like a constructive conversation. Um, but going into that conversation, we can't think, all right, hopefully things get better after this, because they might not.
Hmm. Yeah, very true.
And kind of back to Pete's point then. So sometimes when it comes to trauma and everything else that encompasses things, we project onto another person, correct? Maybe emotional needs that we need that we can maybe nourish ourselves, but we're not. So therefore we're expecting it from a partner in a sense. So being in this relationship dynamic, how can you differentiate where you might be projecting needs that you can get from yourself?
So when you're projecting, right, it's usually you're displacing something onto somebody else. Let's not even use the word displace, because that's a whole other thing, but you're putting something onto somebody else that has nothing to do with them. Um, so asking yourself, is this have to do something with my partner? Is this something that I'm needing my partner to do? How is my partner involved in this? Or, asking yourself, like, hey, what is up with this? Is this something that I need? Is this something I have to work out for myself? Where are these feelings, thoughts stemming from?
Hmm. Okay. And then on the flip side, what if it's hard for me to express myself in a relationship? How can I slowly go about things without fully changing myself? Because let's just say, for example, I struggle a lot with expressing emotions or just communicating in general. What are some steps I could take to better myself at doing those things? Because if I'm a poor communicator, the only thing I can really do is improve my communication. But I can't just throw it all out there off the bat, right? It's not something that's naturally going to come to somebody. So how do you take these small progressions in creating this better communication?
Well, better communication starts with better awareness of what it is that you want, right? What it is that you need. So having a really good relationship with yourself, and sort of being present with yourself and understanding your own motivations, your own thoughts, feelings, actions, reactions. But to your point, Peter, you're not going to go and talk and say it all at once, but I think baby steps, right? So at first you would share one small thing that maybe is difficult, and then you see that whoever you're sharing with responds not horribly, right? The earth doesn't stop turning because you said this one thing, and that gives you the courage and the confidence to continue, sharing more and more and more. So you're practicing, right? You're kind of practicing that communication, but you don't know what to communicate if you don't understand yourself. So you need both of those, the practice and then that self understanding.
Yeah, and I love how this is called a dynamic because we're creating a safe space from ourselves to open up like this, but also if the partner is not receptive and they're not creating the safe space and they're being defensive based on what you bring up because they feel personally attacked, well, then this dynamic is just becoming a lot harder because you don't feel heard and then they at the same time don't feel heard, right?
Right. Because you have two personalities, right? When two personalities come together, there's so much at play that we don't see, right? We don't even think about, because when I'm interacting with you, you guys have no idea what my background is, what my past experiences are. I have no idea what yours are, but all of those come together when we interact, and that's what forms the dynamic.
Yeah, 100. Yeah, this really resonates because, like you guys keep saying, it's a two-part system. It's a relationship, so it's between two people. So both people have to be satisfied. And where you should start is yourself feeling satisfied, because before you could change someone else, you kind of have to change yourself, or you have to understand yourself. You have to be aware of what makes you happy, because your significant other might be super happy, but if you're not happy, then it's going to fall apart anyways. So that's where that self-awareness comes into effect, because you have to be very self-aware. You have to be aware of your needs, your wants, and what makes you feel sad, what makes you feel angry, what you really like, and you have to harness that. And you have to be the first one to be happy in a relationship, because if you're not happy within yourself in this relationship, it's never going to work out, no matter how happy you make the other person.
That's 100% right. If you are not good with yourself, you're just bringing this ticking time bomb and like throwing it in somebody else's hands. And, the bomb's going to explode one way or another. So you got to diffuse that, right? Work through your own stuff and then come together more peacefully if you want some things to work out between whatever relationships you're having.
So I love the metaphor that you guys mentioned. So taking time bomb, we need to diffuse the situation. But from a principle standpoint, how do we do that? Like, I want some details maybe for somebody that's listening. Do you open up a journal and talk about this yourself? Do you sit with your partner late at night with a glass of wine, talk about this? What is the principles, or what is the way that this actually looks from like a 3D model?
So relationship with self is what we're talking about, right? Like self-understanding and self-awareness, even, all of those things you're learning through experiences. You're not just gonna sit down and think, do I like the color green, or do I like the color purple, right? Or do I like Chinese food or not, right? You're gonna have experiences, go out into the world, interact with other forces, and through those experiences you learn, that was for me, I really like that, or that wasn't for me. You're going to engage socially, right? And you're going to see, wow, that person's personality really pisses me off, so I'm not going to interact with them. And you can do a version of this without even leaving your house, right? Through reading, through journaling, but you need to have some sort of prompts. You need to kind of be asked things that cause you to expand, because it is kind of an expansion of knowledge of who you are.
So, Alex, how does a healthy relationship look like? Because a lot of times people think they're in a healthy relationship, but when you actually look, so the people might say they're in a healthy relationship, but then like you observing it from an outside perspective, you see that it's kind of toxic. So, what are some, like, I want to say
Values, maybe?
values, or just how does a healthy relationship look like? How does healthy communication look like? How does it show that you're like in a healthy relationship?
Well, when we start off with communication, right? Both parties are being heard, right? You're able to communicate back and forth. And even if you engage in some sort of conflict, or if there's disagreement, you're not running from that. So, when people say, oh, we never fight, we never argue, well, that's not healthy either, because you are not dating yourself, you're not best friends with yourself. So, you're obviously going to have things that you disagree with, and you need to know how to deal with those disagreements. So, you're going to communicate, you're going to work things out, right? You're going to come to some kind of conclusions. You'll create a plan, pros and cons list, whatever it is that you do in conflict. But we don't want to run from conflict and then just expect it to go away or blow over and then we move on. So that's really important in relationships, not running from conflict, but actually working through it, because that's where you gain strength as, a unit between two people, right? If you can safely and effectively deal with conflict, that's huge. Communication, right? Overall, all areas of your life, you need to be able to communicate, because your partner, your best friend, they're not a mind reader. So they're not going to know what you are thinking, how you're feeling. And even if it seems obvious to you, right? Like, oh, they should know that I'm feeling sad, or they should know that this is angry me, or they should know that I'm feeling lonely. They don't. People just don't. Nobody's a mind reader, not even therapists. We can look at clues, right? But then we always ask people, like, oh, is this what you're feeling? Is this how you're doing? Trust. You need trust in a relationship. That's a really big deal. and you need intimacy. So when I say intimacy, I mean you're communicating some of these things that you wouldn't just say to somebody down the block, right? You're kind of going deeper and you're getting to those tough subjects because that's what helps build the trust. That's what helps build openness. That's kind of what helps build connection when you are talking about those harder things.
I love that. So communication, trust, and intimacy. So those seem to be like three big values of a happy relationship. So based on your work and everything you see in therapy, are there common themes that people are bringing up in their relationships that people are troubleshooting? Does it have to do with those three values? Do you see maybe other things like self-worth or self-love? What is your experience with your clientele?
So when it comes to having like dysfunctional relationships, it's people who are dysfunctional with themselves, right? It's people who think, I'm okay and I can engage with somebody else and we'll be okay when they're really not okay, right? And the stuff that's being projected onto a whole other person causes conflict, and there's so much other stuff going on. Um, so you need to be okay with yourself, basically, is a lot of the work I'm doing. You kind of need to know like a little bit more about yourself besides like what your favorite color and what your favorite food is. You need to look at some of your values, right? Some morals, because those come up in friendships, in relationships, those come up a lot. And if you have differing values or differing morals, that's not like a red flag, but it's something that will come up. It'll be a point of contention and you'll need to work it out. So from those, right, that value, that moral, if you don't know how to deal with conflict, right, those become conflictual.
I see that.
Yeah, it's very important because, man, I mentioned a handful of times on our prior episodes is that when you enter a relationship, you have this one set of values, but under that set of values, you have these smaller values that you're okay to settle on if they're not met. So it could be like, it could be anything. Like, for example, if you don't like going to the pool, and I like going to the pool, but I'm okay with not going to the pool. Versus like maybe I'm religious and you're not religious, and one of those higher values might be religion, then that's not going to work out because religion is something that I'm not willing to settle on versus going to the pool I'm willing to settle on. So it's like figuring out what your real values are that you cannot compromise on or change, and then figure out smaller values that you still value a lot, but you're okay if your significant other doesn't have those same values. Yeah. So on the flip side, Alex, then what are some signs of a toxic relationship? Because a lot of times I see people enter a relationship, new relationship, but it's the same as the prior one where it's still toxic. There's couples that communicate not effectively and they try to get one up on the other one. You get those people that you go out to dinner and like someone says something and the other one tries to get one up on them by saying something else or playing cat and mouse, things like that you from outside visual know that it's not really the healthy thing to be doing in a relationship. So what are some like toxic signs of relationships, and what are some things that you shouldn't do when you're in a relationship?
So think about forms of communication, right? If your only form of communication with your significant other or with your friend is aggressive, or it's only passive, or it's only passive aggressive, and you don't have that clear, open communication, that's already a big sign that things are toxic. If you can't talk to each other, how are you working out all the other aspects of your relationship, right? How are you picking where you're going to eat? How are you picking whose family you're going to spend Christmas with if you cannot communicate? I think for me, just how people talk to each other, and like when I witness other people and how they talk to each other just in public, right? That I might not know anything about them, but that kind of gets me curious. Like, ooh, do you guys, if you're talking like this to each other in public, like what do you say back at home? Um, so that's probably my big thing. You need to like look for that. And if it was an issue in the past, in a previous relationship, let's think of ways we can work on it for this future one before we even engage in this relationship, because it might be doomed from the start if that's something you don't work out on. And just some other things, right? Like if you have things going on with yourself, whether it's mental health issues, right? Whether it's like financial issues or all these other things, you need to be open, right? You need to be open about these things and have some some honesty in that relationship, because you can't hide, right? You can't run from those things. They will come up in your relationship. And imagine if you're with somebody, even a friend, right? And maybe your friend has this huge gambling problem, but you don't know about it. And then 4 years down the line of this super great friendship that you thought you had trust and honesty in, this person like goes to jail because they're so in debt or they're doing some crazy stuff with money, right? Like that's big red flag toxicity when you are not open or honest to some degree.
Yeah, I want to share a toxic relationship that Matt, you and I have both seen. So this is when we were in Las Vegas. I met that couple from like Mississippi or somewhere.
Oh, jeez.
And we were walking. Yeah, this is probably the most toxic relationship I've ever seen in my life. And I told Matt, hey, if I'm ever in this kind of place in my life, remind me about what I saw in Las Vegas. Because so I met this couple. It was a guy and a girl, and this whole time the woman, the female, was complimenting Matt, myself, and our friend, and talking about a bunch of other dudes that she has been throughout her life, and she never said one good thing about her fiance. And they just
She
became
was dismissive to him. In a
dismissive.
sense.
Yeah, dismissive, complete. Like she openly talked about all the dudes she had sex with in the past, and like complimented us, but didn't say any single nice thing about her own fiance.
And they got married the same day. It was just so confusing to us to see, and it was just like this is the definition of run the other way if you see this.
Yeah, and it was like I felt bad for the guy. I'm like, I felt bad for both of them. I'm like, this guy is in this relationship where he's not seen with any kind of value, and I was like, wow, if I'm ever this low in life where I accept a woman treating me this way, like I snap out of it. Like it's I don't want to ever be in this guy's position, and that was like the most, I don't want to say disgusting, but one of the most saddening things I ever seen in a relationship.
Right. It was I don't know how else to put it. Just like you said, just sad. And I think that's why it's important when you get into a partnership. And this is something from Lewis Howes is values, vision, and lifestyle. Right. You need those values that you mentioned, Alex. You have some kind of foundation. Maybe it's on the same mission of life. You want to go help other people, or you want to go move to a different continent where you can start cultivating a different lifestyle. Because if I love to travel and you don't love to travel, well, where's the compromise? Where's the 50-50? Can we do it 6 months out of the year? Can we not? So different things you have to be aware of in these relationship dynamics. But going back to toxicity, so why do we get into these patterns of toxic relationships? How come we don't learn from the previous one that we just had where we could create and form a better relationship? Maybe you can mention trauma a little bit, or how we kind of bond to each other based on this, like these old wounds that we have.
Wow. Just, using the trauma aspect, right? Like when you are not learning from your past, or you hold on to this belief from the past that you're not worth much, right? Your self-worth isn't great. So you don't deserve these nice relationships that are super healthy and helpful. You might hold on to that thought, right? Your self-worth and the value that you put in yourself might be so low that you go from one relationship to the next repeating this stuff because you don't think you can do better, right? Maybe it's not conscious, but subconsciously there's something like pulling you back and saying, hey, that's not for you. This is okay, but you can't do any better. Because that person who traumatized you, or that situation that was traumatic to you, right? That sucked. And you're kind of carrying that with you. Those go hand in hand. I also think people don't take time to self-reflect, right? So you just go from one relationship to the next, and you're not taking a breather. You're not kind of asking yourself, like, what went wrong? What went right? What is it that I need to work on? What should I work on? And people also needing to like self-inventory, like, am I okay? Am I okay enough to continue into another relationship? Or should I work on some stuff, for a bit before I carry that into another pattern? It could be any of those, right?
And Alex, when it comes to your personal relationships, what are some things that you don't settle on? Or what do you find very valuable in a relationship?
So you know how people say like opposites attract? We know that's like an exception, right? We know that's not always the case. So similar values, similar wants and goals, similar like outlooks on certain things in life, whether it's like what it is that you want to achieve, what you want to accomplish, like education wise, all those things. If you're seeing eye to eye, especially me, right? If I have friendships that we're seeing eye to eye, there's so much less conversations we have to have. There's this deeper level of intimacy, right? Because we understand each other better. So we can kind of move on past these little conversations because we already have that down, right? We're kind of similar. And we can grow and move on towards other things. But I think similarities, similar values, that's a pretty big deal for me.
And this is a random thought that I just had. You know how when you're talking to your friends or significant others, there's like that you could say moment of just where it's like quiet. It's sometimes it feels like a little bit awkward. So when you have a lot of moments of silence, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Does that provide any kind of view on how relationship is going? Like if you're comfortable with just being together but not speaking, does that show maybe a positive correlation with a more stronger connection?
Well, you got to think about the purpose of the silence because, for example, in therapy, right? Silence is therapeutic. Silence gives you time to reflect. It gives you time to collect your thoughts. It gives you time to kind of just like ponder, like, okay, what is going on? Like, let me check in with myself, right? Let's be mindful for a few seconds. So silence can serve lots of purposes, but you're right. If you have silence in relationships and you don't feel the pressure to need to fill the space and the time with conversation, that's a good sign. But then again, opposite of that, like if you're just quiet, you're fearful of speaking up, or you have nothing to speak out about, that's kind of problematic too.
That's deep. Again, just like you mentioned, the main point is just being very aware of yourself, because if you're aware of yourself, you're able to approach the dynamic without that projection of the filter and really ask yourself in the situation, is this something that I can do, or is that something that's wrong with the partner, where you could kind of start creating the space or understanding maybe I need to readdress my values. And for anybody listening, I think that's really important to getting into an intimate relationship, is just talk about values, talk about the shit that's hard. Ask yourselves, like, what do you value from your friends, from your community, from your career, from your family, from your spiritual side, and really get to know, do you understand the person? Like, am I going to really click with this person in a year? Just like you mentioned, after the superficial thing goes away, if you need some kind of foundation or values where you guys could resonate and talk to each other about deeper subjects. And if it's only about a couple of movies, a sports team, or whatever the case is of communication, it's really hard to create a strong foundation to continue in the relationship.
Yeah, and then why is it so hard for you to talk about those values? Is it because you're scared of being judged? If you're scared of being judged based off your values, wouldn't you want to just put it on the table in the beginning instead of holding that thought for 10 years where you're always feeling judged about your values for 10 years because you never really clearly talk about them? That's like it's like a scary thing. It's sometimes people enter a relationship and they wait years and years and years to finally get to know their partner, and after those years they realize that they waste their time because they really don't align. It's just they're settling, and if you're settling for somebody, that sucks, because you might not feel valued. You might not be giving them a value. You're never going to be happy because you're just okay with things being the way they are, and it's not always right, because then you have no excitement. What are you looking forward to? Nothing. If everything is always the same, there's nothing to really look forward to.
Yeah, there's an interesting quote that I read in a book. The book is by the Gottmans, basically the Bible for relationship talk and creating better relationships. It's that if you are truly invested and like deep into a relationship, you never stop learning about the person that you're either dating, you're married to, or you never stop learning about your friends, right? You always find some things to ask. You're always using open-ended questions. There's always curiosity. You have so much in your heart, right, for that person, that you want to know all these things, right? And people change and learn every day. So it's not like we stop learning about each other at a certain point. No, because we still have all these different experiences, new stuff happens to us. So just that curiosity and always being open to asking questions of your significant other or your friend, you just want to know more and more about them because of how much you love and cherish them.
Yeah.
I love that. That's amazing. As we wrap up the show, if you had a chance to share a piece of advice with anybody one last time or with the world, what would it be?
Work on communication. Even if you think that you're the best communicator out there, there's probably still something you could learn about communication. And nobody has ever said, I regret learning about communication. That was a waste of my time. Nobody says that.
Yeah, very, very valuable. And Alex, where can people find you if they want to maybe enter our therapy session? Where could they find you at?
They can look me up online by my full name, Aleksandra Zubek, and they'll find me on 2 separate websites that they can seek me out if they want therapy.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much.
We just want to acknowledge you. Thank you for getting on the show and sharing your wisdom. We know you do it with your patients, but thank you for being on this platform, being able to impact a greater amount of people, whoever's listening. And thank you for sharing the beauty of relationships and what you need to have with communication to create long-lasting relationships.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alex.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show and want to support the podcast,
Please subscribe, leave us a comment, or give us a like on all platforms.
at We Are Frontline Warriors.